All right, so I pretty much have everything in the rack position-wise where I want it. I swapped the Axe-Fx and the rack gizmo just because it worked better in the back in terms of cabling and such. And then I also swapped which drawer was on top. Originally I had the Strymon stuff that goes in the effects loop as the top drawer. I think it's going to work better on the bottom. And so now we're starting to do wiring, and what I'm doing, come back here and I can show you, is basically you want to keep your audio signal path and your power signal path separate. So the audio path is going to come along this edge from all the pedals, and the power path is going to go either as perpendicular to that 90 degree, cross any cable at 90 degrees and try to come along here to go into this, and then the plug for this will come out the back this way and go with the rack. And what I'm doing is I'm starting measuring, and one of the new things I ended up getting was this bar. See this kind of bar that angles in here, this one? That's basically a cable tie, so it allows, I'll be able to run cables up to it and then tie them around it. So it'll be nice and neat, and that's the back of the rack gizmo where they're going to be coming into. So what basically is going to happen is the cable's going to come. I had to measure the distance from fully extended drawer to this part, to this part of the rail, so that way I keep that distance, and then also what it's going to take to wrap around it. And I measured the longest cable run, which would be from this corner coming off or coming down and then into this jack. And then I have that distance pretty much set. So then as I measure the cables, I have that measurement, like basically I just cut a length of my old cable right here. So I know this is the length that I need, and then when I measure a new cable out off of the spool, I measure that length, and then I put the start of that here, so I know this is how long that needs to be to where it needs to go, and then I measure from here to whatever pedal I need. And then I'm starting to put down some tie points. Obviously, you do not want to start tying up until you get all your cables done. And I've also started fraying the ends just so because you want to test them as you solder your cable ends. And I'll have a whole video that goes over soldering as well. Anyways, that's kind of where we're at right now, and keep on keeping on. So I wanted to show one quick tip while I was starting to do the XLR cables for the back panel. And sometimes, so for example, this is a 2-conductor cable plus shield. So you know the XLR is the 3 prongs. Sometimes the ground wire, you want to protect it from the internals of the cable in case it bundles up on something or rubs up against one of the other contacts. And one of the thing you can do about that is you get heat shrink tubing, which is, I've got a bunch of it right here. It's just basically kind of hard to see, I'm sure, but it's hollowed out like a rubberized tubing. And what you do is you cut your piece to length, you know, like such, try to make it so you can see it. And then you slip it over the actual, the ground wire that's been tinned. And then you just take your soldering iron, and as you just apply heat via the soldering iron up and down, it starts to shrink. So you can see it's attaching itself. And there you go, done. And as you can see, put this right here for you. See if I can get this in frame. There we go. And that's what it looks like. And make sure when you trim the top of it, you want to leave enough so that way you can actually get it into the contact or the terminal of what you're soldering it to. There you go. So now I am going to start working on the patch panel on the back of the rack that I'm putting in. So this is where I'm going to plug in and out of all the gear. So that way I don't have to actually touch the actual units themselves or put extra wear and tear in their jacks. It'll all be right here in one simple place for me, easy to get. This is a Neutrik, I think they're called Neutrik D connectors or whatever, or D size, whatever, something with the letter D. I think, I could be wrong. But this is a Neutrik style, just blank, empty patch panel. So what I have is, these are going to be the two XLR outs from the Axe-Fx. So I can go to my audio equipment or front of house or whatever. These are the same output on the Axe-Fx, but the unbalanced ones. So that way these can go to amplifiers, whatever else. Then I put a space just to denote clarity. These are the two normally closed jacks I was mentioning earlier. This one's going to come from the rack gizmo, and then it normally closes over to here, which will go into the Axe-Fx. And then that way, once I plug a jack in here, I can actually run it to the front of an amp or whatever. Now, you also notice that's all the audio connections. I'm keeping them on the left side. On the right side, now we have this is the USB pass through, so that way this is how I get the USB into the Axe-Fx. This is the 6-pin connector for the Mastermind GT22, so that'll be its input, where I plug the controller into. And then also, I have to fix these, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to put the 8-pin DINs that are for the function controls in the rack gizmo are going to go here mounted. Now, one of the cool things about this is if you say you have a 1/4-inch jack or something like that, where it's not built to the Neutrik's D size or whatever it is, they make these little panels like this. So that way you can actually, that's what these are in right now. You can put the jack through it, and then it go ahead and fit on top of that and allow you to screw right in there. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that was a pain in the butt is these were really hard to find, these 8-pin DIN connectors. Don't ask me why. But of course, these are chassis mount. So I could not find these in the Neutrik size. And it's too big of a hole to go in this, so I'm going to have to drill this to get this to fit. Wonderful. That's half of this rebuilding this rig, even when I did it in the first place, is just learning how to MacGyver crap together. So as long as you try to do it in a way that keeps the audio signal clean, there you go. But that's the point, or that's the plan. So time to start drilling and start soldering some more. And it's done, and it turned out awesome. It's super quiet, no noise, no hiss. The MIDI pulse that was finding its way into the signal, gone. So all the things I had a problem with the original builds, all the little tricks and stuff I learned along the way to build and that I've been going over, they paid off. So let me go over and recap some of those tips and tricks for you. First, I think, is definitely invest in good power supplies. Especially you want one that's got galvanated, isolated taps, so that way you're not incurring any kind of ground loop that is accidentally finding its way across your equipment or your pedals and such. And then the other big one was making sure to just do a good job when you lay out the cables of separating the power and the audio paths from each other. Now, you'll notice in the cable wraps there's these red cables. Those are the MIDI cables. And so since MIDI and control voltage and stuff isn't audio, you want to route those with your power signal to keep them away from the audio. And so hence you'll see power MIDI control voltage bundles go down one side of the rig, and then the audio signals go down the other. Now, you also notice on one of these drawers, it's okay, you can have them go parallel to each other, but you want to keep them separated. The big thing is don't put them all in the same bundle of cable where they're right on top of each other, because that's where you're going to get the signal bleed. Now, in the inevitable case that you're going to have an audio signal and a power signal cross each other at some point in the way you're laying out your cables, make sure that they cross as perpendicular to each other as possible, 90-degree angle to each other. That will help keep the interference to a minimum as much as possible. Also, the patch panel in the back turns out to be super useful. It's just really nice to have a singular place to just go and just plug everything in, and then if I have to take the rig somewhere to practice or a gig or whatever, or another studio, I just go ahead and, unplug it all, pack it up, go, bring it back, patch it all in, done. Super simple. So one of the things you can also see on the upper drawer is I've got this extra room for expansion. I don't know what I'm going to put in there yet. One of the things I'm thinking of is getting the Bulb Deluxe Overdrive pedal from Proton Pedals, but we'll see. Figuring it out as I go. So one of the things I didn't really get a chance to go over at the start of this series was the actual pedal board. And I figured I'd just take a few moments to go over it here so you can kind of see what the signal flow is and what I'm using to control this whole rig. Now, one thing to note before I get into the details is I like a real wah pedal, and the CAE Dunlop wah is the wah for me. Wahs are very personal, but that one's got just the perfect quack, and the pedal throw and the way it interacts with the filter is like exactly the way I expect it to be, so I can express with it really nicely. It's just what I like. And also I didn't want to have to make an even bigger rack to get like a rack mounted volume and a wah pedal. So to keep the rack size down, I wanted to keep that on the front of the board. And also because since I have actual pedals that have to go in front of either the Axe-Fx or an amp, that means I need a proper volume pedal in front of those pedals so I can control the gain signal that's going into them. And I'm not touring professionally, so I don't have to worry about the rig sitting somewhere 30 feet backstage and then having to run this massively long audio cable to it at the front of the stage. It's like, no, I don't need to worry about that. If it's 90% of the time, it's going to be sitting here in my studio, and then when I do gig or whatever, go practice, it'll be close. I can put it really close to wherever I am at the front of the stage or whatnot. So that didn't bother me. But the signal flow. So it comes out of the guitar and it goes into this, the black pedal under the tuner. It's an Empress buffer pedal. And so the signal comes in there, gets buffered, and then there's a little effects loop of what pedals you want to have buffered in it. So it goes out of the send from that into the volume pedal, out of the volume pedal into the wah, and then back to the return into the buffer. And then from there, there's an output that I use to connect to the actual rig itself, and it goes into the front input jack of the rack gizmo. So it's super easy. I don't even have to go behind, into the patch panel or anything. I just plug it into the front. And the other nice thing is it has a tuner out, so I can leave my tuner on full time, and that's why it's taped on top of a little buffer there. And that's the audio signal. The MIDI signal, on the other hand, is I use the Mastermind GT22 to control the whole thing. And in my opinion, it's by far the best MIDI controller on the planet. I don't think there's anything better. What this thing can do is incredible, and it could be a whole video series just on that alone. In fact, if you go to the RJM website, they have a bunch of videos like showing it, controlling different pieces of gear and how you can use it. It's extremely flexible. And so I just have the one 6-pin DIN cable coming out of it because the power is located in the rack, and so all the power comes over the cable. So the only thing going back to the actual rack itself is one audio signal and then one DIN cable, and that's it. Now the other few things that are on the board is the Mastermind allows you to hook up to 4 expression pedals, and I'm just using one right now. It's a Mission pedal. And then also you can control up to 4 momentary switch, or you can plug in 4 momentary switches to control things. So hence you see the black and the 2 red switches also from Mission Engineering. The black switch I use as a tap tempo. That way I don't have to dedicate one of the LCD screens to it. And then the 2 red switches are used to control the infinite hold and repeat options on the 2 Strymon units. My first video, the little piece I was playing through, I kind of showcased that feature a little bit. And you can get some very cool washes and stuff like that. Interesting sound effects. I've even used it in my second video when I did the little outro solo showing how to use scales and modes. That chord was created with an infinite hold via the Blue Sky reverb, or the Big Sky, the reverb. And then I just took a big long chunk of it and then just looped it and played over it inside of the DAW. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you found this video series helpful. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope it at least inspired you to build the best rag you can. And if you're having noise problems, hopefully it'll help you solve that and give you some ideas on what you can do to build out yours. And that's it. So have a good one, and I'll catch you on the flip side.